And it looks like we're all here. So today we're presenting abortion storytelling, a media training. My name is Emma Hernandez. I'm the communications manager at We Testify, and I'll be your facilitator today. So We Testify is an organization dedicated to the leadership and representation of people who have abortions, increasing the spectrum of abortion storytellers in the public sphere, and shifting the way the media understands the context and complexity of accessing abortion care. But you know who can tell you all about We Testify? Our founder and executive director, Renee Bracy Sherman, who is here with us today. So I'll pass the mic to her to say a quick hello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this amazing media training. I think you're going to learn so much. My name is Renee Bracy Sherman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the founder and executive director of We Testify, which we exist to support all of you, people who've had abortions, to share your abortion stories and change the conversation and really make sure that people understand who has abortions and why, and the diversity of our experiences. I am so excited for you to learn from Emma and the rest of our team today. We created We Testify because I didn't see a space in which we had just somewhere it was dedicated just for people who have abortions, right? And addressing the very unique stigma that we experience, whether it's stigma towards people who have more than one abortion or later abortions, or the erasure or ignorance of people of color's experiences, immigrants' experiences, folks with disabilities experiences, queer and trans folks' abortion experiences. So we wanted to create a space where you're able to bring your whole selves, all of your abortion stories, and are able to be supported in sharing in that way. So we hope that this webinar will provide you with really great insights and knowledge that will be useful for your professional abortion storytelling and also your professional growth, because we all deserve to be the leaders of the abortion access movement. Our team has worked really hard to prepare an informative and engaging presentation. So I'm really excited that you're going to love it. I know it. Once again, please put all your questions in the chat. Whatever question you have, I'm sure someone else has it. So just go ahead and ask away. And then thank you so much for joining us today. We really look forward to a really exciting training and engaging with you more as you share your abortion stories. Mwah.
Thank you, Renee. And once again, thanks everyone for joining us today. We're going to get started. Once again, my name is Emma Hernandez, she, her pronouns. I'm the communications manager at We Testify. You'll also see with camera on my friend Karina Reyes, she, her. She's our development and communications coordinator. So she'll be helping us out managing the chat in the background. I just wanted to make a quick note for everyone. As we said in our email, this is a space that is specifically for people who have had abortions. If you have not had an abortion, we respectfully ask you to please leave today's Zoom meeting. We have other opportunities for connection with you and to support your understanding of our abortion stories and how we tell them. We just ask that we have a separate meeting with you, since this is a training that is very much so geared for people who have had the lived experience. So I'll give you a moment if you need to step out. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Awesome. So we are here today to talk about sharing your abortion story with the media. Once again, I'm the communications manager here at We Testify. I'm based in San Antonio, Texas, and I'm proud to be leading a communication strategy that centers and uplifts abortion storytellers' voices and expertise. So I'm really excited to have you all here today with us. A little bit about me. I am Midwest Mexican, now living in Texas. I'm a former librarian, so I love a good book and helping people get the resources that they need. I'm an illustrator and very passionate dog mom. Some of the storytelling that I do in my capacity as the comms manager, but also an abortion storyteller, I talk about medication abortion, self-managing abortions, having had multiple abortions, as well as abortion during in the context of SB 8 here in Texas. And so I'm sharing today as a communications professional, but also a person who has had abortions. And so know that the information that we're sharing is, of course, the like textbook, oh yeah, this is what you should, the do's and don'ts of talking to the media, but also from our own lived experiences of what you should keep in mind when you're sharing. Our goals here today are to learn the basics of narrative in activism and political or cultural shift. We're here today to reimagine our stories and explore them as parts of our persona and how we can use our storytelling to reappropriate and reclaim the lived experiences that we've had and our own bodies. We'll also have an opportunity to share your wisdom as a storyteller with the group and learn from one another. So once again, you can use the Q&A function to drop any thoughts, ideas, ideations. You can also drop any questions there. We'll mention them during the presentation, but also at the end, we can look through that together. So why do we share our stories? Storytelling is a practice of leadership. It's the way we can redistribute authority and change the narrative. As Renee mentioned, we're telling diverse stories to build a consensus and really build the understanding of who we are as people that are having abortions and have had abortions. Each voice contributes to the group's insight, and there's no story within that that's inconvenient to our movement's narrative. Storytelling itself is how we're sharing power and how we let people know what we've gone through, what we have brought out of that experience, and how we're moving forward. Your story, our stories is the why behind organizing. It's the reason why we're continuing to advocate for abortion access. And so our stories are vital to this process. We're practicing the art of translating our values into action through our stories. But most importantly, our stories are how we make sense of the world. Storytelling is a part of our cultural being and our humanity. It goes really deep into our roots as tellers and as listeners, and stories help us rethink our own identities and values, which is really good for cultural and political shift. Storytelling can help you reappropriate or reclaim that which has been taken from you, the story of your body, your life, your gender, other parts of you, and others in your community or your culture. Why do we share our stories, though? It's really important, specifically around abortion and abortion access, because a society that does not speak openly about abortion communicates that abortion is shameful. When we see portrayals of abortion on TV or in movies that focus on the indecisiveness of the pregnant person, that empowers paternalistic laws that would subject us to unnecessary ultrasounds, require us to see images of the pregnancy before being able to proceed with our abortion, or have us waiting 48 to 72 hours before we can have an abortion. When the media portrays abortion as something that's inherently challenging, isolating, and requiring our silence, it denies us the community of the 1 in 4 who will have an abortion during our lifetimes. And so by telling our stories, we're breaking down that system, that paradigm that tells us we should be alone, isolated, silent, and we're saying, no, this is something that we want to have a conversation about. And the fact that we have so many of you here today lets us know that there's interest in sharing our stories, interest in hearing others talk about it, and interest in seeing more representation broadly in the media. With that in mind, let's take a moment to reflect. What story have you been telling yourself about your abortion experiences? Before I began sharing my story, my abortion experience lived in myself and in my body as something shameful, isolating, wrong, and something to keep secret. This was despite me knowing that my abortion really propelled my success and positively impacted my life. But because I had always seen these messages of abortion being something you don't talk about, or something that wasn't talked about at all within my community, I participated in that, and I didn't talk about my abortion. It wasn't until my mom let me know she was going to an anti-abortion protest that I realized, like, I have to talk about it, or else people won't know that there's someone in their immediate circle, someone that they love, that has been impacted by these laws, by these restrictions to access, and that's impacted by those protesters that are heckling folks outside of abortion clinics. And so I shared my story with my own mother. That was my first storytelling experience, because I just knew that if it's mentionable, it's manageable. If I can talk about it, someone else will be able to manage it better. Someone else won't feel the same isolated that I did. So if you're here today, I take it that you're interested in sharing your experience and changing the narrative, whether that be privately or publicly. We just want to know who's in the room. So we're going to launch a poll where you can let us know how you've been sharing your stories thus far. And so you can select an option if you've never shared your story, if you've been sharing your story privately, just with close friends and loved ones. Maybe you've been sharing it anonymously. So you have like an option on our website where you can share your story without putting your name or any image of yourself. Maybe you've been already sharing publicly in the media through op-eds or social media. And then the last option is everyone knows about my abortions. You talk about it all the time. You're super comfortable with it. And you're just wanting a little bit of guidance to, lead you forward in your storytelling journey. All right. I'm seeing about 50% of folks have been talking about their abortions privately with close friends and loved ones. About 20% of us are already sharing publicly in the media, social media, and about 3% have never shared their abortion publicly before. Awesome. Thank you so much. And you can continue answering that question. I believe, everyone has. So we're going to go ahead and end that poll. I'm going to share the results so everyone can see. All right. Awesome. And so when we talk about sharing our stories, a lot of the times people focus on who this audience is. We're thinking about who we're sharing the story with rather than why we're sharing the story ourselves. And so we wanted to frame our storytelling through We Testify and helping you understand that the principal audience for our storytelling is ourselves, the person who has actually had the abortion. We're sharing it for our own benefit and because we want to share our story. We're not doing this to propel any political or social justice issue forward. We're doing it because we want to share our story first and foremost for the cathartic nature of breaking that silence and talking to other people about it. There's other folks that are interested in us sharing our story and that benefit from that too. There's people who will have abortions in the future that would think it would be great to be able to see someone just like them who's talking about their abortion so that they know that they're not alone. There's people who have had abortions who are similar to you, who similarly may benefit from hearing your story and knowing that, hey, this is something I can talk about now too. And then there's the people that love us. There's the people that maybe will never have an abortion in their lifetimes, but who are supportive of you, who want to make sure that you're doing what you need to make, to talk about your abortion so you can feel, empowered and reclaim that experience. And we share it for them too. They want to see us succeed and we love them. They love us. Of course, we'll include them within that conversation. But you'll notice in this graphic, at no point are we centering people who disagree with us, who don't want to see us access abortion care. We're not trying to convince anyone of our humanity or of our choices. They are not within that framework. We are doing this for our own benefit, for our own cathartic experience. But when we are thinking of an audience, we can reflect a bit. And if you have pen and paper with you, you can maybe put some ideas down. Who are you directing your story towards? What kind of emotions do you think your story might inspire, both in yourself and in others? And how do you want to connect with your audience? We'll be going through a lot of information today, but one thing that you can always keep in mind, if you forget everything else, is just remembering that you're sharing your story and telling it to the person who you were before you had your own abortion. What did they need to hear before having an abortion? What would you have loved to hear from your community, from your family, from your friends before you had your abortion? That's your principal audience. It's important to also assess what emotions your story might inspire in yourself so that you can plan accordingly afterwards. Give yourself some breathing room after you tell your story or really understand what your emotions were in that moment. And connecting with your audience is understanding what avenues you would like to actually share your story in. And so we'll talk about that in a bit as we move forward in our presentation. You'll also want to think about what aspects of your life you want to share with the world. There's many different things that, make us who we are, and that can help us assess where our boundaries lie in our storytelling. For example, I want to share my abortion story, but I don't want to share details about my family life or my geography. I want to focus it on me and my lived experience. I rather not talk about, say, what region I'm living in or share my name at this time. Perhaps you had your abortion in your early, in your teens, and you've gone on to have your family, and you don't want to bring, your current life into the conversation, say your profession, any type of information you don't want to share, you can define those boundaries for yourself. This is part of you deciding what you do want to share and what you don't want to share. And that'll be a resource that you will be sent a PDF document where you can journal there too about what's within your boundaries, what's outside of your boundaries. Of course, there's key elements to storytelling where you would walk through your own, the challenge, the choice, and the outcome. And so that would mean the challenge of course probably was, I'm pregnant, I didn't plan to be, or I didn't want to be, or it's not the right time for me. It's not healthy for me. Many different options in framing that challenging experience. How you came upon the choice, and it doesn't have to be a really complicated choice either. There's lots of people, myself included, who had an abortion simply because they didn't want to be pregnant, and that's perfectly fine as well. But what was that choice looking like for you? What elements of your socioeconomic background do you want to include? What don't you want to include? And how do you want to walk your audience to the outcome itself? How does your life look like now that you've had an abortion? How has it improved? What are ways that you reflect on that decision now, with the context, say, of things changing in your life? Maybe now you are a parent. Now you can have that more context of what parenthood means and reflect back on your abortion. Maybe you've moved forward in your career or come into a more stable part of your life. How did your abortion impact that for you? And then the mic drop moment is really assessing what you want to leave your audience with, the listeners, the readers of a news article, what information you really want to impart on them. What misinformation is out there about people like you, the type of abortion you had. For example, sometimes people will have stigma still about having had multiple abortions. I've had multiple abortions, and things that I want to clear up for people may include, hey, you can have an unintended pregnancy for a lot of years in your life. It's not outlandish to think you may have more than one abortion in your lifetime. And so how can I talk about that with people so that I reduce that stigma, silence the stigma, and allow more people to tell their stories about their multiple abortions? While you're telling your story, you can also weave in cultural context, data, and values. You are an expert in your own life, and so you're not expected to be sharing your story and connecting it to whatever legislation is up right now, or the statistics of people, Latinx folks in Texas having abortions. What does that look like? That's not an expectation of you, but you can include data, context, and values within it, and we're here as your resource. And so you can reach out to us. You're not alone in doing this, but you can ask us for information, say, hey, I want to talk about my Latinidad and connection to my abortion experience. Can you let me know what those numbers are? How can I talk about it more clearly? Or, hey, I want to talk about, queer folks having abortions. How does that connect? A lot of that information can be found on our website, but you can also reach out to us directly, and we can work with you through some talking points if that's something that you want to bring into your experience. If your story is an outlier, or you had a privilege that helped you navigate barriers to access that most other folks are being harmed by, you can explain that and address it and how it impacted your experience. you shouldn't shy away from it, because we're at the same time, can acknowledge, hey, my story is a little bit different than most folks. And we can shine a light on that and say, hey, this is how more people should be able to access abortion care. If you had like an easy breezy experience and you found out you were pregnant, you could get an appointment that same day, you had no financial burden on you, and you were just able to go through your abortion experience pretty quickly, that's a story we also want to tell, because that's how it should be for everyone. And so we can bring that story up. Once again, there's no story that's convenient or inconvenient to our narrative, to this movement. We're wanting to uplift everyone's story. So your values can be part of your story as well. If you're coming from a certain religious background, it can be part of your story too. What was it like having an abortion in your specific cultural context? That's very meaningful to other people that are interacting with your story going forward. And you can also include sensory details of what was going on in your life. So you can remember, what were you eating during your abortion? What were you watching? What kind of area did you set up for yourself in your home if you were having, say, a medication abortion at home? Or what were you doing in the waiting room at your clinic while you were waiting to have your abortion? So when you're working with We Testify, and we're really glad you connected with us, what we do with our storytellers is we really create a community of support around them to make sure that you understand why we share our stories, which is what we were just talking about. B, that we're vetting any person who wants to talk to you about your abortion story. And so what we won't do is connect you to media opportunities that will question you rather than support you. You want to walk away from this experience feeling heard, feeling believed, not questioned, not someone asking you, hey, was abortion really your only option? And like, that's not the type of interaction we want you to have. You are going to find yourself in interacting with the media, and perhaps in many different ways, different channels. But what we try to do to the best of our ability at We Testify is to make sure those media opportunities are supporting you, are not having you interacting with anti-abortion narratives, and that we're not extracting your story for our own organization or movement gain. You always have the ability to retract consent. If you say, hey, actually, I don't want to talk about my abortion story right now, or I'm going through a hard time, I don't want to take that media opportunity, talk to us about it, and we can definitely plan accordingly. But you always have the ability, similarly to sex, to give consent, deny consent at any part of this experience. So we won't pressure you to share your story, and we won't leave you unsupported in your storytelling, or if you face any sort of harassment or repercussions from sharing your story. We always want to make sure that we're giving you all of the information that you need, and that you have all of the resources at your disposal so that you can do this in a way that's mindful of your own humanity. And yeah, we'll just support you through it. You may find yourself interacting with the media or reporters. And what's really important before you even begin that process is defining what risk-taking in your storytelling means to you. So is risk-taking for you simply sharing your story with anyone? I've never talked to anyone about my storytelling in my lifetime. For me, just telling my friend is a big, risk for me. I don't know how they're going to react. That can be your boundary. You're trying this for the first time. Even you being in this Zoom call might be like a little bit nerve-wracking, but we're here for you. Maybe risk-taking in your storytelling is putting your name out there for the first time and saying, hey, I had an abortion, and sharing that publicly, say in the newspaper. Maybe you want to do it as a written piece so you can review your quotes. Maybe you want to answer questions via email so you can really think about it before. So you define what risk-taking in your storytelling means to you. Where are the boundaries within your story? Do you want to share regularly? Do you not want to share at this time? What aspects do you want to include? What don't you want to include? This is all very important. And then, as I mentioned, defining your own emotions with your abortion so that you can correct anyone who puts words in your mouth. I've been in media interviews with reporters where I'll tell them, hey, I found out I was pregnant. I didn't want to be, so I went to schedule my abortion. And they'll say, oh, that must have been so hard for you, or that must have been a really hard decision. And me knowing like my own emotions and being able to have written that out beforehand to say, actually, no, it wasn't a hard decision. I didn't have any stress or, hardship in making that decision. I was very secure in that decision. I had hardship in going through the barriers to access, but I was very certain in my decision. And so understanding your own emotions is really important so you can correct others who sometimes are talking about abortion in a stigmatizing way. You also don't have to polish your language or your thoughts or your feelings, and no one should ask you to. And so you can speak how you speak, talk how you talk, share your experience with the media in the way that's most comfortable for you. You don't have to feel stressed about speaking more academically or more professionally, because someone out there is wanting to hear someone like you speak and speak honestly. And that's really a big part of this too. Also, be aware of emotional labor. Identify when you feel like you're giving your story away instead of keeping it as a part of you. So if you ever feel like, hey, I'm sharing my story, but I don't necessarily feel like it's doing anything for me at this point. I'm sharing it for I feel like I'm giving it away. You can take it back. You can say, hey, I'm going to take a break right now. Or I don't like doing that type of interview. Or I'm you can just be tired of talking about your abortion. That's all okay. Focus on your own health and your own healing before working to help others. And so we know in this moment, a lot of people are looking for ways to engage around abortion access, and storytelling for you might feel like an immediate way you can get involved now. But if you ever feel like your own health and healing is being harmed in this process, talk to us about it, and we can find another way to have you be engaged. Stay true to your boundaries and what you set for yourself. You don't have to share if you don't feel like you're still in it 100%, whether that means part or all of your story. Maybe you've had multiple abortions and you have one abortion that was easier to talk about, and you're like, okay, I can talk about that abortion anytime, but my second abortion was a little bit more difficult. I think I need a break from talking about that. It's emotionally exhausting. We're your support system. We're behind you all the way, and we can assist you in assessing your own boundaries, talking about what experiences you liked, what you didn't like, and then moving forward accordingly. You also have the right to ask for compensation for your story. If you've already been sharing your story, as we saw some people who answered the poll, you don't have to do labor for free. You don't have to show up at every rally, and not be compensated. You have the right to ask for compensation for your story, because you're the reason behind our organizing. You're the affected community. And so you have more than a right to ask for compensation. It can be healing to find your voice and reaffirm your values and your worth through the process of crafting and telling your story. And we want to keep you in that healing space. If you ever feel like you're not in control of your own story, like you're giving it away, like you signed up for way too many things and it's overwhelming, we're here to help you to reassess those boundaries and move forward. So let's think real quick. And if you have your notepad, your pen, you can think through what values do you bring to the realm of abortion storytelling as it currently exists? What parts of your story are not out there as much that you would like to, really let other people know about? What do you need from us, from We Testify, to support you and to really support ethical behavior in relation to your stories? What do you expect from your audience, from reporters or politicians or the general public in order for you to tell your story? You're the one in control here. So it's really great to define for yourself, what do I expect from those around me? It could say, hey, I only want to talk to reporters who've actually had an abortion. I only want to talk to people who know what I'm talking about. And I only trust those folks to frame my story the way I want it to be framed. We can do that. If you only want to speak at rallies that have been mindful about accessibility. I'm a disabled individual. I want to make sure that I'm only speaking at rallies that have this at top of mind. That's 100% okay. We can work with that going forward. But thinking through what you need first really puts you in an empowered space when you're deciding if and when to share your story. You can also choose what medium works best for you. So there's a lot of different options, some of which will be ways that you can work directly with our communications team here at We Testify, or finding other opportunities to talk about your abortion experiences. We're going to launch a second poll where you can have multiple options as to how you would like to share your story in the future. Do you want to be better prepared for sharing privately in a one-on-one or a small group? Do you want to be speaking publicly, whether that be a panel, a keynote, a rally? You want to share on social media? You want to do interviews for news articles, for TV, radio, or podcasts? It could be more art-based through photography, art, or dance, or longer video portions like documentaries and films. And then there's also, of course, legislative visits or giving your testimony to politicians, say. So lots of different options, and you have multiple choices. This just lets us know where our interests lie. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the process may look like for you for one of these avenues. The most common avenue that we have is people wanting to share with the media so that they can have an interview with someone. That individual would then work with you to craft your story, send you everything, and you could see someone else write your story into life. Awesome. So it's looking like a lot of folks, lots of interest in public speaking, in being interviewed for news articles, TV, radio, or podcast interviews. And lots of folks also wanting to do legislative visits or testimony. That's great. I'll let you continue answering that poll as we move forward for the sake of time. But here's what it looks like when you work with We Testify for your media opportunities. We receive a media request where they may give us a storyteller profile or, some parameters on what type of storyteller they're wanting to talk to. Say they're wanting to speak with someone who had a medication abortion in the South, and they need to speak to them by the end of the week. It's a Zoom interview that will be recorded. This is the type of newspaper it's going to be for, and what safety and security they can provide for you. Say they're willing to take an anonymous interview, or this reporter has a lot of experience talking about abortion. And so we work with them first to understand what the media request is, what the project looks like. Then we would reach out to a storyteller to prepare them for that interview. So walking you through what you want to share, what you don't want to share, perhaps prepping talking points for you. If this is one of your first interviews and you want to make sure that you're getting like, hey, I want to include, like we mentioned, some statistics. I want to make sure I have those written down somewhere so I can refer to them. And then also setting your boundaries. So if there's certain types of questions you don't like to answer, that we can walk and practice how you're going to redirect. And that can be as simple as saying, hey, I don't want to answer that question right now, or that's not what I'm here to talk about today. What I want to talk about is my abortion experience and how this impacted me. And so we can walk you through that. I'm also happy to sit in on your first interview if it's your first time, or any interview. If it's a new format you're not as familiar with, we're here to help you. After your media interviews or participation in a public speaking engagement, we will debrief with you. What went well? What didn't go well? Were you triggered in any way? And how can we form a plan going forward to make sure you're supported? Would you recommend working with this reporter again? Did you have a great experience, or did you have a bad one? We keep track of that so that if they ever reach out to us again, we'll know how to manage it. We can also give them immediate feedback via email on your behalf so that the labor is not on you. Once published, did you like your quotes? Did you like the way that your story was framed? We encourage you to read the story, but not read the comments. We want to make sure that you're focusing on the content itself, sharing it on social, thanking the reporter, but we don't necessarily need to engage with public opinion on our abortion and our abortion story. If you need a correction, you can let us know and we'll be in touch with the reporter to make sure that there's we can make changes. But once again, you should leave that experience feeling heard and believed, not challenged. You want to feel heard and believed, not challenged. No one asking you of questions about, are you sure that's how it was? Or, hey, could you share more about your emotions in that moment? And you're like, I wasn't very emotional. But I was, so your perspective is key, and honoring those boundaries is really important. And so we want to just ask, how will you change the story for a better future? What do you want to see out in the media? How do you want to change the conversation? What did you need to hear when you were having your abortion experience that would have really changed the conversation and the experience for you? All right, I'm going to stop sharing so I can look at some of the questions we may have, as I see that we have a few. Awesome.
I have a couple
Yeah.
Flagged for you. So Ale asked if we can't, in terms of like charging for your story, because you mentioned compensation, you can't charge news outlets, right? So in what way do you seek like compensation, and in what circumstances?
All right, I'm going down to that question.
With the bottom.
Charging news outlets. Yeah. So yeah, when we're referring to compensation, it's if someone's asking you like, hey, can you be part of this panel? Or can you go at it? Like, I need you at this rally. Like, you can say, hey, for me to get there, I need an honorarium, or at the very least gas or, travel compensation. We've had storytellers request childcare assistance before. Anything that they're asking you to like go out of your way to show up for them, they need to show up for you in that way as well. Once you work with We Testify as a storyteller, we can also support you in have compensation and honorariums for your time for media interviews, but from the media source directly, you are not able to request immediate compensation from them.
Yeah. Also, a really good question. Does We Testify have resources for thinking about risk and potential ramifications about sharing our stories of self-managing? Would want to be sure I or some other folks in my life are clear-eyed about what it would entail. Thank you so much for this space.
Yeah. Hi, Phoebe. Yeah, so great question. We do one-on-one trainings for people who we can walk you through, that individual self-managing experience so that we're able to specifically understand their context and support them in the state that they're living in and the state where they SMA'd. So we would want to talk with them more individually so that we can give them guidance and understand what level of risk they're willing to take on in sharing that experience. So for example, I speak a lot more openly about my self-managing experience. A boundary for me would say I'm fine speaking like on a panel at like a pro-abortion conference and saying, hey, this is my name, this is my face, this is where I work, I'll talk all about it. But if I'm sharing with the media, I might be a bit more reserved in sharing where exactly I'm living right now, where I had my abortion experience, and being a little bit more guarded there. So we can work with them individually, and in our follow-up email, we will include a link where you can do a one-on-one with myself, and we can walk them specifically through that one.
Okay, we have a couple. So is the support We Testify to navigate a free service or paid? It's free. And I just want to reiterate that we're here to support you in your journey and to create community with folks who've had abortions. So I just want to kind of like, in case anybody else was thinking about that.
Yes. We won't charge you for anything. It's a free. Yeah, we're here just building community. We're a nonprofit, we have our fiscal sponsor, all that fun stuff. We're not requesting any, funds from you. We're here to provide you services and support. We want to see more people talking about their abortions, but we want to make sure that they're supported and that they're receiving all of the resources that they need, whether that be questions about your self-managed abortion and the legalities around discussing that experience, whether you share your story on a publication and, are getting bombarded with negative comments. We're here to support you. And that could be as simple as us sharing your article in like spaces that are supportive and saying, hey, can everyone go in there and leave a positive comment? We're getting outnumbered here. We can do that, and show up for you in that way. Or if it's corrections that need to be made to the article so that you'll be in a, better position. So, for example, I think last year we had an article that shared some of our staff members' locations, and it was kind of like a lapse in our end when we were screening it. And, then we went back and said, hey, actually, can you remove our, locations of where we're living right now just for our own like safety? Because the article got a little bit more, negative comments than we were wanting. So there's different ways that we can interact with you and provide support, but it's all free.
This is a good question in terms of people who are outside of the US. Like this person asked, is there support available to Canadians who've had abortions in Canada or the US? So I know we have partnerships, global partnerships. So I thought it'd be interesting for you to just touch on that.
Yeah, we primarily work in the US, but we support everyone. We have virtual programming like the one you're on right now. And so there's nothing keeping you from interacting with us or your own advocacy work in Canada. And so we can support you in that. We may have a little bit of a learning curve, as staff members who are primarily focused on like US based abortion storytelling as to like the context that you're speaking from, but we're willing to do that work with you and, grow in that way too, so that you're supported. But yes, we have trainings such as this one and other abortion storytelling trainings that you can attend virtually that we can get you in the loop for. We're also gearing up to start our abortion storyteller like newsletters, so you can learn more about other people sharing their story and you can read them as well.
So does We Testify support people in getting opportunities to tell stories about how bans affected them, like a person being denied abortion medication at the ER asking for a friend?
Yeah, those are like types of stories that we support anyone telling any type of story. And so even the stories where we can look at the result of a person being denied abortion access, those are very important to our conversation as well. And so we can support people in talking about that experience if they're wanting to share with the media too.
Okay. Another question. We have two more, and then because we have a couple more slides, but what is the best way to share a story where there's grief about not able to have a baby at this time, but I know it was 100% the right decision, no regrets or grief about that, but still felt grief? I feel like this can be easily spun as regret to the media. So I guess navigating the language in which you express like the range of emotions, which are all valid, by the way.
Yeah, we can definitely walk you through that. And there's an additional training that we offer that we will have in the future, which is just generally abortion storytelling 101, where you have more of a communal ability to sit and journal about your specific story and what feelings you have around that, as well as emotional triggers. When we talk about the experience of having grief after your abortion, and I know that's a big concern. You don't want anyone to feel like you regret that experience, but you're like, hey, it would have been badass to have been a parent at that time, but the circumstances were not in my favor. That's a very real experience. That's part of reproductive justice and the conversation that we're having. The fact that you didn't have access to the ideal conditions to have, continue with a pregnancy that in other circumstances you would have wanted. That's a conversation we need to have, because that's part of, what the work that we're doing in the first place. And so that concern is real of not wanting to have anyone read that and say, oh, they regret not having their abortion. And we can work with you on your talking points and how you, we can do a one-on-one to walk you through the way you tell your story, what you want to uplift, what you don't want to uplift, what you don't want to talk about, so that you feel more comfortable. And as you share your story in the future, that you know that you're giving quotes or you're talking about it in a way that feels comfortable to you.
Okay, and last one. I like this one. How many storytellers does We Testify have? I see folks on your website. Are those the folks who you mainly work with? And then how do you become We Testify storyteller?
Yeah. So the folks on our storytelling page on our website, they have gone through, for the most part, a retreat where they were able to like work in community to meet other people who've had abortions and go through all of this curriculum that we have kind of in segments right now, all in one, say, weekend. We're working towards bringing that back after, we were affected by the pandemic and going into a virtual space. And so we're working actively to bring that back so that you have more opportunities and to engage. But the storytellers on our website have kind of gone through that experience of going through an in-person retreat and are now actively part of our storytelling network. After this training, the way that you could engage with us, and I guess that goes into our next slide, you'll be first receiving an evaluation. You'll also be receiving a storyteller intake form where you can tell us a little bit about your abortion experience. When did it happen? Where did it happen? How many abortions have you had? We can look at your interest in how you want to share. And then our next step would be scheduling a one-on-one so that you can formally enter, say, our storytelling network. And so that you have received all of the information you need to like begin your storytelling journey through We Testify. So we'll send a follow-up email that tells you next steps and how you can engage with us. And maybe one day you will be on our website too. But you'll also notice on the website, that's part of it as well. Some people include their headshots. Some people have illustrations of themselves. Some people use their full name. Other people's only use their first name or a pseudonym. And so we can walk you through specifically what feels comfortable to you so that you're, doing this conscientiously and understand like all of the implications for your story specifically. So yeah, I hope that helps.
We have one more question. Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when Rena, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, asks, when we are overwhelmed with sharing, or if we get into a panic state, what kind of support could We Testify provide? And how does We Testify separate the support from therapy? So in terms of like just the, I guess, emotional regulation or
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first and foremost, first, we're not professional therapists in any way, but we are a listening ear, and we are sharing a lot of similar backgrounds with most of our storytellers, and the fact that we too have had abortions. We too are sharing with the media and talking openly about it. And so there's a camaraderie in that experience where we are able to, discuss about your emotions, and usually might have had an experience like that too. What that looks like can be, of course, the emotional support to the storyteller themselves, but also giving that storyteller the space to feel that emotion while we handle all of the back end work of, hey, I had a negative experience with this reporter. It's like, okay, I'll talk to you about it. Vent with me. Tell me all about it. What didn't you like? Then you can focus on feeling better from that experience. I'm going to focus on sending an email to that reporter, telling them what we didn't like, why we're not going to work with them in the future, what we would need to see from them to move forward in the future, what needs to be changed in the article itself. And so we do a lot of that. We do that labor on your behalf so that you're not the person having to first be put in a negative mindset and then having to clean up someone else's mistakes. So we do that. What we can also support and provide is, say, if you had any, negative interactions with, say, your story got a lot of attention and people are starting to like harass you online, we can provide you support there too, to make sure you have all the resources and connect you with our partners so that you're resourced and so that you're not alone in that experience as well. So it goes beyond, of course, we can show up emotionally, but it goes beyond that in providing you some of that logistical support. And another thing that we do for our storytellers, if we know they have an abortion anniversary coming up, or a big moment, or say they're having an abortion in this moment, we also show like gestures of good faith and sending them, say, a bouquet of flowers or a like a care package to support them in those experiences too going forward. And so there's many different ways that we try to show up for one another in this virtual, very geographically dispersed context, but it's showing love for each other in the positive moments, showing up for one another when we're having our negative feelings or need to vent, but also doing that labor behind the scenes to make sure that you're having as positive experience as you can moving forward.
And that is all, I believe, of the questions that we received. They were really good questions. I feel like they spanned kind of a spectrum of information that and services that we offer.
Awesome. Yay. So if we're gonna put in the chat, thank you, Kylie and Lorraine, we try to do amazing work, and part of that is your feedback as well. And so I'm going to drop in the chat some different links. So first, we have our evaluation form where you can just let us know what was great about this session, what you needed more information about. This is an intro session, so if you can fill out our form letting us know what you would like to learn more about, we can do additional sessions in the future. This media training was more so getting you ready to share your story, understanding what you want to share and how we can interact with the media across different contexts, because some of you, as you're already sharing, maybe are getting reached out to directly by reporters, or you're working in different like community spaces and rallies and things like that. So we just want to make sure you were prepped for that. But one-on-one sessions might be good in the future if you have like a specific need, like, hey, I'm doing more podcast interviews and I want to, improve in that realm, or I'm doing my first TV interview. How can I, prep for that? So if you could fill out our evaluation form, that would be awesome. And then we also, for our first timers, if you've never had a training with us before, if this is your first time here, we also have our storyteller intake form. So that's the second link I'm dropping. I should probably put what each one is. Storytime. I'm going to do that now.
Also, we had a couple people ask if this training was going to be available afterwards. We are recording it and we're going to be uploading it to our YouTube. And what I said to some folks is that when we do our like follow up, we can go ahead and once we've uploaded the video, send you the link to that if you want to rewatch this, because I know some people are kind of in the middle of different things. So
yeah, so we're gonna this has been recording. We'll put it on the YouTube. We'll send you the link, and from there you can watch it as many times as you want. If there's like certain like journaling prompts that you wanted to sit through, I'm actually including in our follow-up email one of those PDF forms, so you can like fill that out on your own time and really think through it. And then lastly, what you'll find in our follow-up email will be a link where you can schedule a one-on-one with myself if you're ready to take the first step and want to talk more specifically about your abortion story and your journey and what your goals are going forward. So you'll get that in a follow-up email from me. And we have the question if we're getting more of the I Had an Abortion t-shirts in stock, that they'd love to get one. We are working on that one. But yes, we're going to get more. We have the I Had an Abortion. We also have the I Had abortions, plural. But we can get your information on the storyteller intake form. You can order your shirt here. You can get them shipped to Canada. We're just low on stock. So you may find what we have still available. I think we still have white shirts, a lot of white shirts available, but the black ones we're out of, but you can order them there. And oh no. Okay, we'll figure that one out. Sorry, Canada. But yeah, message me offline. We'll figure it out. But yeah, any other questions at this time? I think I see.
Yeah, is
Is
there a
the-
next workshop to follow this one coming up this year?
Yeah, so we are, once you fill out our intake form, that actually gets you into our email list as a person who's had an abortion, and then you'll be up to date on our next training. So if you want to fill out that intake form and the evaluation form, let us know what you're looking for, and we can let you know when something comes available. But that'll be our next steps. And then hopefully soon we'll be able to see everyone at in-person retreat, and we also participate in a lot of conferences where we sometimes offer closed abortion havers only spaces. So we can include you in our email list so that you'll know where we're going to be at and how you can connect with us in the future.
All right, that was all the questions for today.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I really hope you enjoyed it and you took something away from this. Our big lesson, of course, at the end is just, what did you need to hear before you had your abortion? What did you need to hear while you were having your abortion? What messages do you want to correct? And that's really our guiding light as we begin telling our stories. And we're here to support you, both myself, Karina, Renee. We also have our deputy director on silently, Nakia. But we're here. You're not alone. And we want to hear more about your abortion stories and make sure that stories like yours are, available for everyone to listen to, read, watch. That's what we're here for. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good day.